over me for quite some time, trying to make sure that I didn't have any cuts and bruises, and to make sure that I was rested and ate a nice meal. Even though I was surrounded by strangers, it felt good to be back on dry land again. When my parents burst into the room, I could see the worry on their faces. My body wasn't too beat up, but being in the ocean for so long made me look worse than I was. My dad immediately went to asking questions, trying to find out if there was anything wrong with me. My mom came to my bed and held me tight in her arms. I hugged her back, so happy to be near her again. When she finally let go, I could see that her eyes were red and puffy. My dad came over to me next and apologized for not getting there sooner and told me how he hired every available boat to search for me. I shook my head and gave him a hug too. I was just happy that he was there now. From then on, I knew not to take life for granted. Every moment is precious and should be spent appreciating everything that you have, because you never know when it may be gone. So yeah, call it bad luck or even a stupid mistake. I can't really argue. I was having the best vacation of my life before I ended up alone in the middle of the ocean. Now, you might wonder how the heck a person would end up lost in the middle of the ocean on a family vacation. Well, you can say that my luck isn't exactly typical. Before everything had escalated to this, I was planning a trip with both of my parents to the Caribbean islands. You see, my family is kind of rich, the kind that can afford to rent out a private jet when they go on vacations, and that's exactly what we did. On the 1st of October, we packed our stuff and were ready to enjoy an adventurous weekend. I didn't pack much. In fact, I didn't need much. Just some clothes and my special parachute suit, which I always take with me on every vacation if I ever feel like parachuting. I could honestly tell you guys that parachuting is the thing that gets me excited the most. The sensation flying in the air can't be compared to any other feeling in the world. In most cases, my father jumps with me and we land together on the island. However, this time, things kinda took a different turn. As I was getting ready to jump, I stood near the door of the jet waiting for my father as he was getting ready to join. When I looked down, I could see that we were almost near the land, and I was getting really excited to jump. The view looked so amazing. So I took out my phone from my jacket pocket and took a picture. But that's when something happened that took me off guard. My phone slipped from my hand, and I quickly leaned forward without thinking, hoping I would catch it. You could probably assume that at that point, what I did was very stupid because it had caused me to lose my balance and trip off the jet. Oh my God, I couldn't believe this was actually happening to me at the moment. Everything was so quick that I couldn't even utter a word or scream for help, and I started falling as I heard my parents screaming my name. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. And I just thought that I'll do what I always do, except that this time I was gonna land without my father. About 10 seconds later, the automatic parachute went off, which meant that something was wrong. It must have been the way I fell out of the jet, I thought. It was going too fast, and I did not jump correctly. I was heading towards the earth without any idea where I might land. But when I looked underneath, all I could see was water everywhere. I honestly wasn't sure if I'd land in the sea, but I was hoping I wouldn't, because it was going to be a big problem. Before I knew it, I had hit the ocean. I had to act fast to avoid drowning. I remembered the instructions that said if you land in the water, you must get your chest strap off to take the gear off quickly and swim beneath the parachute. Even though I was panicking like crazy, I tried to calm myself down, because I really needed to focus on what I was doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't survive. It took me a while before I managed to focus on the way I was swimming. I was honestly scared to death that my feet would get tangled up in the parachute and drown me with it. When I looked around me, all I saw was water. No ships, no land, no people, nothing. I took my shoes off to help ease my movement, and I swam around towards where I thought could be the way to the island. But I realized after a while that there was no way for me to know if I was swimming in the right direction. At that moment, I started realizing that I was in much bigger trouble than I thought I was in. I can't even describe the feeling I had. I have never been more scared in my entire life. My body was tired. Swimming started to become exhausting, and I honestly wondered whether that was going to be my last day alive. Then a thought hit me. I remembered all of the adventures I had taken with my parents and how there were a lot of hard times. At that moment, I knew that feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed to fight to stay alive. I never thought I would be put in that kind of situation. Well, to be fair, there were times that it had passed my mind, though I think everyone has had those kind of worst-case scenario thoughts, but never did I think of that. I thought about all the best ways to retain my energy. My biggest problem was that my body felt like lead. I didn't want to push myself too hard and sink to the bottom, so I decided to float for a while. However, with more time to think, more bad thoughts kept coming to mind. I was in the middle of the ocean. What if a shark came up from the water and decided to eat me? They could smell blood for miles, and their jaws could snap down on me quick. Even while I was floating, there would have been a shark creeping along the bottom of the ocean, just waiting for the right moment to attack. Needless to say, I was feeling uneasy. Even if it wasn't a shark, what if a freak storm hit and washed me further away from where my parents were looking? The weather around the island was supposed to be superb around this time of year, but that didn't mean the weather couldn't change at any moment. I knew deep down that it may have been illogical, but at that moment, logic seemed to be the last thing that made it to the top of my mind. I never felt so weak in my life. There was nothing I could control. If something went wrong all of the ways out here, I would end up dead, and my parents wouldn't even know what happened to me. I was out in the open with nothing to do but swim around, and I was hardly the fastest thing in the sea. There was no mistake in how vulnerable I was out there. So many thoughts that seemed to weigh me down more than my own tired body. I started to panic again and started to swim again, trying to do all I could to make some sort of safety fast. Then I thought better of it. I knew that I needed to calm down if I wanted to survive. The only thing I could do was wait. But if I used up all of my energy then and there, I wouldn't have any later in case I desperately needed it. I didn't know if there were any sharks around, but if there were, I would not go down without a fight. Those may have been empty words, but they made me feel better at the moment. I started thinking about other things. I wanted to fill the time by thinking about anything that would take my mind off of the situation that I was in. Lying there, looking up at the sky, I started to play little games in my mind. I looked at the clouds and found images in them. And then I would remember times that would fit with the image. I saw slopes and remembered how my family went skiing the year before. Skiing down the mountains and feeling the cold on my face while surrounded by the thick snow. The hot chocolate I drank when we all sat down in the lobby at the end of the day, and the fireplace in our room as we sat and played board games. It was one of my favorite memories of last year. The clouds started to drift through the sky, passing me by, on their way for their own adventure. I could see the sun start to dip in the sky, but I didn't know how much time had passed. My body was starting to ache all over. From hitting the water to swimming as hard as I could, I was pushing myself further than I ever had. The worst part was not knowing how much longer I would need to continue pushing. At that moment, I couldn't even panic. I was too tired to do anything else but float. Trying to do anything else would take too much energy. As the sun drifted lower in the sky, I thought how beautiful the orange glow over the water looked, and I started to wonder, would that be the last thing I saw before I died? When the sun had completely faded in the sky and the stars started to show, my body started to falter. I could feel myself dipping underwater and tried focusing all of my attention on staying afloat just a little longer. I could feel tears in my eyes, but they were covered by the water. I clenched my eyes shut tight, my mind once again drifting towards the negative. I wasn't going to be found. Maybe my parents were looking in the wrong place. And what if my swimming earlier was in the wrong direction and I made it harder on them? I started to come down on myself harder than I ever had before. I opened my eyes again and looked up at the stars. One stood out above all the rest. It was brightly reflected on the water, but when I looked up, I didn't see it. When the light got brighter and brighter, I realized that it wasn't a star, but a boat. I smiled to myself as it came closer to me. Then I used the last of my strength to scream out. As the boat came near, I could feel relief fill my body. I didn't know how long I was there, nor did I know if I would make it, but just being able to see help coming for me made all the difference in the world. The crew helped me up onto the boat and led me over to a small cot that they laid out for me. It wasn't until I was out of the water that I realized how cold I actually was. When they saw me shivering, They wrapped me up tight to fight off the cold night and headed off in the direction of the island. It was finally over. I was brought to the local hospital and waited for my parents to arrive.